Gazimus here with another Grand Archive video. This one here I just have some gameplay from our locals. So this was the final between myself and Jared. Both of us were playing Arcane Rai, which is nice to see. It's the current meta. We haven't been seeing too many Arcane Rai. So my rounds before that, I bet a Water Sylvie and the Wind Lorraine, and Jared he bet a Water Xander and a Water Lorraine. So I've won the dice roll and I'm going first. So the Rai mirrors, especially when they're both arcane, are pretty interesting just because not a lot happens until both players are at level 3 or they've both got arcane activated or enabled. So just waiting for my opponent to get ready. And then on my turn I just passed, just because I just want to play a spell at his end step and not give him any information on what I'm doing and just kind of see what he's doing. So he begins here with a Magus Disciple, so attacks me for 1, his champion gets +1 level, and then class bonus on death he draws a card. At the end I just fireball him for 1. Not ideal, you don't want to waste that card, but it was the only fast spell I had, and essentially it was able for me to put 2 arcane cards in my memory, so I could guarantee 1 to banish. Because I'm playing Spellweaver Rai, the one that gets +1 for every arcane spell in your banishment, you want to fill your banishment with arcane cards. So I go to level 1. So I'll enter Rai Spellcraft, gets 2 light encounters, and then I go down and throw a Library Witch. Now it's not always best to play a Library Witch into other Rais, but I saw he had the Magus Disciple on the field, so I'm like, if he attacks with that, at least I get my card back. I didn't really have any other plays. Opponent draws up, he also brings out his Rai, so he leveled up as well, banishing an arcane card, so good starts from both of us there. Also, I'll look to get better dices in the coming matches. So now my opponent plays a Cremation Ritual on the Magus Disciple, because he's now a mage. The cast bonus triggers, so he draws 3 cards off that and calls it a turn. For my turn, because I've got 2 arcane cards in banishment, I decide to just go for the level up. So now I'm level 2. So level 2 Rai reads, whenever you activate your first mage action per turn, you put in a light encounter. So I currently have 2, and then every spell player will add 1, and when you have 3 light encounters, you can remove them and draw a card. So I decide just to pass. My opponent is also deciding to level up. Now one of them that he banished was a Conduit of a Mad Mage, so he doesn't get +1 when he's a level 3 Rai. It's only mage spells, and Conduit of the Mad Mage is an ally. So it's an interesting card for me to see. So it's kind of told me that he might have a few different win cons instead of just like Arcane Blast and Fireball, which was what my deck was trying to do. So you can see both of us are pretty careful on what cards we're putting in memory. He plays Period to Mana now. So this is put 2+ level in light encounters on your champion. So that would be 4, but because he's now Rai level 2, he gets an additional 1 for his first mage action. So he has 5 in light encounters. Plus the 2 originally, he'd have 7. So that's just me telling him there you've got an extra counter. So he's used 6 of them there to draw 2 cards. And then he calls it a turn. Because you get an encounter each turn, sometimes it's good to play on your opponent's turn. So I just bring out a Grand Crusader's Ring, banish it to draw a card. I'm just trying to replenish the cards that I've lost due to leveling up, and just try regain some cards when my opponent has so many. So like my opponent, I also play a Peer into Mana, gaining the 5 counters. I quickly spend one of them and then just quickly have to remind myself that I have used those counters. Again, I'll look to get better dices in future matches. Now I play Scry the Skies, just allows me to glimpse a couple because I just don't have enough arcane cards in hand. So I'm just trying to filter to enable myself to have a few more arcane cards. Unlike my opponent, I don't burn all my counters at once. And then on the end of my turn, he plays Ignite the Soul to give himself a counter, and then also to put Floating Memory into the graveyard. He then uses that to get the Tome of Knowledge. So this is class bonus, champion gets +1. It's a mage class bonus, and then if you can banish it to draw a card. You kind of want to keep this on the board just to give that additional level. So opponent decides to Sparkle at me for 3 damage, gives himself a counter, and just judging by his hand, he probably didn't have any other plays. He decides to then also use his counters to draw a card that draws into the Magus Disciple, which he then plays. He then decides to get rid of my Library Witch. I draw a card. He's probably just worried about me playing a Cremation Ritual. He then plays one himself to draw another 3 cards, which is kind of unfortunate because I just drew a Cremation Ritual, which I would have liked to use, but so be it. So then I use one of my counters, play Ignite the Soul, just to get Floating Memory in there, and then to add a counter. I bring out Orb of Regret because I just don't have enough arcane cards. So I'm just deciding what cards I want to keep later on. I keep in my Peer into Manas and Careful Studies cards that can filter and draw more cards, and just get rid of like Library Witches and the Cremation Ritual, because I just decided that I'm not going to play that because it would slow me down for a turn, and my opponent's very close to getting to Arcane, and I need to be within that range as well. If I also play too slow, it just allows him to get more setup, so I need to get a move on as well. So here I'm just hoping for arcane cards or like a dungeon guide. Got a Creative Shock, which is pretty nice. Dungeon guide also in hand. So I'm just trying to decide what I'm going to do. Don't have enough arcane cards here, so not really happy with the play. So I'll just go fishing for a few more arcane cards again. This time playing another Peer into Mana. Obviously this card is better the late game when you're at a higher level, as at the moment this is just 5 enlightenment counters. But if you're level 10 or higher, you know, it becomes 13 enlightenment counters, and then you kind of get your better value for money. Pretty happy there. I've drawn another arcane card. I'll decide to burn all my counters to draw another card. I see another arcane card, so I'm very happy. I've got the Creative Shock in hand. I decide to wait a turn so I can play it on my opponent's turn. So then this way I can get an additional counter. So now my opponent plays a Grand Crusader Ring. So they also have a dungeon guide. So with the dungeon guide, it's a bit easier to control what cards go into banishment. And playing Arcane Rai, you want to get arcane cards in banishment. So my opponent's just deciding on what cards he wants to put in to put into banishment. So my opponent plays a dungeon guide. So you banish 2 cards at random, and then you get to level up. So you save a card instead of just leveling up to level 3 naturally. And playing the dungeon guide kind of allows you to dictate what cards you want to put in there. So now he's level 3. Rai gets +1 level for each arcane element card in your banishment. He also then uses, because he's got the Tome of Knowledge out, he can bring out the Tome of Sacred Lightning. So you get to banish a Regalia book to bring it out, but you have to be arcane. He then activates the ability to banish the last card in his memory, which was another arcane card, because it's an ability of Tome of Sacred Lightning. When he banishes this card, he gets to draw a card. So when you're playing it with Rai, you cycle the card and you put the arcane card in banishment. So it's a very good play. He now plays a Conduit of the Mad Mage. So whenever you activate a mage spell, you wake it up and it gets +1. So you just keep attacking with the Mad Mage in a turn. So I'm pretty happy I didn't play my Creative Shock. My opponent plays Increasing Danger. Just puts a card for both of us in memory and they draw a card. I then play my Creative Shock, get rid of another Ignite the Soul because I'm class bonus, it does 2 damage, and I get a counter. So this is why it was a good move by me to hold the Creative Shock. 1 to get the counter, but then just to see if the opponent does anything. So I was pretty happy with that. Then they play another Magus, attack me for 1. Only 2 cards in hand and no counters, so I'm not worried about that Rai player having a arcane spell shield. So that arcane spell shield is essentially a card where it stops all the damage that an attack's doing, and the opponent gets counters. So the Rai will then get a counter. So if I do an arcane blast for 11 and they spell shield it, they can stop the damage and get 11 counters, which will be pretty bad. But they don't have it, so I say this is a green light to try kill him this turn. So I play my own dungeon guide. I was only able to put 2 arcane cards in there and another dungeon guide because I'm like, I just don't need that in hand. He hits one of the arcane cards and the dungeon guide, but I'm not too worried because I'm going to do a similar play to my opponent. And now that I'm level 3, bring out my book, banish my other arcane card to draw a card and get it into my banishment. So when that's all said and done, I'll be level 9, which is a very good level to be on. When you've got your Rai Stormseer out, the higher the level you are, the better it's going to be. So now it's just about trying to fish through my deck to find the kill spell or kill spells, because I need to do 24 damage. And this is where Rai, especially when you're playing Arcane Rai, gets fun. Once you've done the early work of getting those arcane cards into banishment, and when you are level 3 Rai, having 5 cards in banishment that are arcane, having the book out, you can just start playing Careful Studies like I do for free, because it's got efficiency. So that's playing 1 card, creates 5 enlightenment counters +1 for my first mage spell, so 6. So it's 2 cards I get to then draw. I then play Arcane Disposition, which, because I'm arcane and class bonus, it draws me 3 cards. So you can see how now I'm just filtering through my deck, just drawing out of cards. I play another Careful Study, noting I haven't popped any of my counters yet. So at this point I have like 13 to 14 counters, representing 4 cards I can draw. So I decide to pop 12 and draw 4 cards. I then now play Arcane Sight, brings me up to level 10 for the turn, and I draw a card, so now I'm level 10. So this now makes any fireballs I play coming in. I decide to fish for another 3 cards, play an Arcane Disposition. So now I know I have the cards I need. I'm just making sure I've done the math correctly. I'm like, yep, I'm level 10. Let's go off. The Arcane Blast, which is 11 damage, but because I'm level 10, only costs 1. I then follow up with a Fireball, which will be doing 11 damage. It costs 2 because of the class bonus, because I'm a mage. So just there's 22 damage. And then decide to do another Fireball for overkill. And that's a game. The reason I also was able to do that was because he had shields down. He had 2 cards with no counters, so I knew there wasn't anything he could play. I hope you enjoyed that game. If you did, please like and subscribe. Any questions or any matchups that you want to see, let us know. And as always, if you have any questions, come find me in the Discord. Shoot us a message. I'm always happy to talk around the archive. Cheers.